Hello, and welcome to WriterSpeak, a program dedicated to the written word and those who produce it. I am your host, Jeane Slone. I am the author of 2 historical fictions, She Built Ships During World War II and She Flew Bombers. Today, in the studio, I would like to welcome Orlean Koehle.
Thank you very much. It's an honor to be here.
And she wrote this extremely well-researched and detailed book entitled Common Core, a Trojan Horse for Education Reform. Before we discuss this most important book, I think it would be interesting for the audience to hear what your educational background is.
All right, I'm a teacher. I graduated from college in speech and drama with an English minor, and then I taught in a junior high in Idaho Falls for several years before my 3rd child was on his way. And I taught speech and drama, and they also included journalism. So I learned from that experience that I love to write, and that's kind of what gave me the incentive to write these books later on. And then I took a leave of absence to raise my 6 children and came back to teaching probably about 20 years ago here in Santa Rosa. And then 2 years ago, I retired mainly because this big fat book was written, and I began speaking tours about it. But coming back into the public schools, I've seen a lot of changes that have taken place. I've seen a lot of fads come and go, and I'm afraid Common Core is not going to be a fad that will come and go because this will not just be in our state, this will be entrenched in all of the states that have signed on to it, and the goal is for the entire nation to be part of this Common Core program.
So tell us what the Common Core Initiative is.
Well, as I show in my book, I really believe it is a Trojan horse because they're pretending that it is a state standard initiative. That's what they've called it. But really the states had nothing to do with it. They didn't even know it was there until suddenly the governors signed on to it. But the Congress was bypassed, our state legislators were bypassed, and our local school boards were bypassed. Nobody knew anything about Common Core until suddenly it was being presented to them that this was the program that the state had now adopted. And so now they're stuck with it. So it is a big top-down federal program pretending to be a state standard initiative.
And I read in your book that there are really 6 main points. Can you tell us what those points are?
Yes, first of all, I call it education without representation because Congress was bypassed. I call it education or taxation without representation because most of the school districts now have to raise the money themselves to try to implement it. How are they going to do this with passing bond measures, whatever else? And yet they really didn't have any say on this. Neither did our state legislators, neither did Congress. So I call it taxation without representation. The 3rd point I bring out is this really is education by big corporations. Bill Gates, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, gave $100 million to Common Core, have since given $50 million more to spreading it throughout the world, actually in 80 different organizations that they hope are going to help promote it. And other big corporations have given money towards it. There's lots of special interest groups behind the scenes that are promoting this. The textbook industry is going to really flourish with e-books. The Pearson Foundation is one of the biggest ones of that. And the Pearson Foundation essentially has taken over the education industry. They have taken over 100 other education publishing companies. They just let them keep their own names, so you don't know how huge the Pearson Foundation is. And then together, the Bill Gates Foundation and the Pearson Foundation have formed a partnership to do the teacher training for all of our teachers. So you can imagine the amount of money that's going to be coming back to them. The Bill Gates Foundation, you think, is just this wonderful philanthropist that believes in education. But when all of our children have computers, of course, he will be making billions of dollars back because the Microsoft computers will be involved He also has his hands in just about all the software. So there's much money to be made by all of these people.
Tell me, what role has President Obama played in this initiative?
Well, some people call it Obama Ed, like he has Obamacare. Some people call it Obama Core. But really, we cannot, he's just added the frosting on the cake. This was a build-up over many, many years, bringing us to this point. There were so many other education bills that went through Congress, like America 2000, which was George Bush Sr.'s bill. Then there was Goals 2000, Clinton's bill. Then there was No Child Left Behind, which was George Bush Jr.'s bill. And then there is Race to the Top, and now Common Core with Obama. Race to the Top did get to go through Congress. Obama has been able to use the stimulus money that he already has, so he was able to bypass Congress. That is why Congress didn't really have any idea that this was happening. He used $4.35 billion grant money to entice the governors of the 46 states that signed on to do so, and he did this by bypassing Congress, just going straight to the governors. It was a 2-month window of opportunity that they had to sign on when their state legislators were not in session. So of course they didn't have their approval, so it was the governors and their state school boards that essentially signed on to Common Core, and that's why we call it education without representation.
Why is there such an enormous expense to implement this program for the schools?
Well, in California, it's going to be costing $1.6 billion, more than any other state, of course, because we're such a big state. But it's mainly the computers coming in. To have this program really working the way they want it to do, every child will have to have their own computer. And that you can imagine how expensive that is. And then, of course, the teacher training for all of the teachers and the principals, all the administration, along with all the software that this will take, and the e-books. They would like all of our children to be taught with e-books, no more textbooks. So this is an enormous amount of money.
So the computers are, probably most people are happy that all the students will have a computer, but this is specific software and specific e-books.
That's correct. And people are also concerned about, maybe the parents have had the chance to look at these e-books and approve them. Most parents want to know what textbooks their children are using and approve them. But we have found in other states that have already been implementing this, they can take a look at the e-book, but overnight things could be changed. So the next morning, what the children are actually being taught isn't really what the parents saw, because with computers, things can so easily be changed.
And you wrote in your book that it was proven that the math standards were not improved by this program. Can you explain that?
Well, there was one PhD mathematician who was part of the review committee for Common Core. His name is Professor Dr. James Milgram from Stanford University. He actually was the only math PhD professor as part of the review committee, and he refused to sign off on it. He said that this is actually going to be lowering math standards. He said that algebra is, the official teaching of algebra is going to be postponed from the 8th grade to the 9th grade, leaving very little room for calculus, the senior year of high school. That the geometry they are bringing in is a strange form of geometry that actually was so confusing. It was thrown out of the Soviet Union 50 years ago. They're getting rid of the Euclidean geometry that has the children learning all of this wonderful deductive reasoning. And then when the teachers that are actually bringing in the Common Core math into their classroom, a normal traditional math number where you have 3 digits plus 3 digits, you carry the 1, is so confusing now. The children have to go through 5 different steps, lining all these numbers up according to tens, and finally they're able to get the answer. If the child has the parents help him with the answer at home and they do traditional math, real quick answer, they'll be marked down because they don't want the right answer, they just want the right process. And then the children are supposed to write an essay explaining what they've done. My son, who is a very popular CPA in the San Diego area, told his wife, who was explaining how this is going to be done because she's a third grade teacher, he said, had I had to do this kind of math, I would have hated it. I would never ended up as a CPA. And many students that were once really wonderful mathematicians are saying the same thing. This is the most confusing, complicated math. It takes them a whole period to do one question. And if you Google Common Core Math, you'll see some of the YouTube clips that come up. There's a junior high teacher who is, middle school teacher, who is telling the students they're supposed to come up with fractions to divide into this certain number. He tells them there is no one certain correct answer, that this is math by consensus. We've never had math by consensus before. And for my son to help people with their income taxes and to do it by math by consensus, it would be ridiculous.
What about the English standards?
Well, having been an English teacher, I am really concerned about them. Professor Dr. Sandra Stotsky, who was from the University of Arkansas, was also on the review committee, and she refused to sign off on the standards. She's saying they are lowering what used to be 80% classical English literature in elementary school down to 50%. In high school, it will be even lower, way down to only 30%. And what will it be replaced with? Informational text. And informational text could be anything. But a lot of what we're concerned about is just the bias of this program. They could be bringing in whatever politically correct information they would like to bring in that before there was no room for, because the children really had to read all this wonderful classical English literature. And what do you learn from classical literature? You learn how to make wise decisions. You learn the difference between truth and error. You learn how to stand up for liberty. All these wonderful, great truths that the children probably will be missing now.
How true. How are the teachers' salaries dependent on how well the children do with Common Core?
This is what when the governors signed on, there were 4 points that they had to sign on to if they were going to be able to earn this money. It was kind of on a competition basis. So they had to be in agreement, first of all, to sign on to Common Core sight unseen. The standards hadn't been written yet. The second point was they had to be willing to do this amazing intrusive data collection on the students and the teachers, and also have the constant evaluation of the teachers. And this is what then tied the teachers' test scores to their salary, to the test scores. And then the fourth one was they had to be willing to turn around the lowest performing 5% schools or turn them into charter schools. Well, California was not quite willing to do all that, and you have to admire us for not being willing to do it, and it was mainly the teacher unions that said no to this constant evaluation of the teachers. So of course we didn't win the grant money, but in other states they are doing this, and so the teachers' salaries are tied to the students' test scores, and if the students don't do well, the salary goes down. And in some cases the teachers say that it's like the test was actually rigged, that the students could not possibly do well on it. Things that they'd never even been taught yet, they now had to have a test on. So this is totally unfair, and you'll find teachers and superintendents writing about this, how unfair this is.
How many states have the Common Core program, and how many states have refused it?
There are 46 that have signed on. The 4 that said no are Alaska, Texas, Virginia, Nebraska. Minnesota signed on for the English language arts part, but not for the math. They recognized the math was really inferior. But they would like, of course, to have all the states to be part of this, and so they continue to lobby these 4 states that said no, and trying to bring this so it is truly a national program. And they're trying to make it so that, of course, the assessment test will be national, and that's what's coming in for some of the states already. New York has already taken the assessment test and just got their test results back. Last year, Kentucky did. They were the very first state to sign on to Common Core. And what was so interesting, the test results coming back, they've 50%, well, 30% reduction in competency and proficiency for both states. And so, of course, both states are questioning, how could it be 30% for both of us? And you'll find that some of the principals and superintendents, I was just reading this yesterday, they're wondering if that was rigged, because the people behind Common Core were saying they expected a 30% decrease in proficiency. Exactly how it came out. And you wonder, why would they say such things, and why would someone even want to rig that test? A principal, Carol Barris, I quote her in my book, she's in New York, and she said, there's a lot of money to be made if you have low test scores, because now you have to come up with new books and new curriculum to try to raise the test scores. So there's a lot of money to be made by the book publishers, by the test writers. And I never even thought of that before, but there's a lot of deception and stealth behind the scenes in Common Core.
Are there any organizations?
That just fell down.
Oh yeah, this is such a great sign. Are there any organizations that parents join to stop the to end the Common Core program?
Just about every state now has a grassroots movement going on. As you see, from California, we've started Californians United Against Common Core, and it's kind of melting in the hot light, I think.
Oh.
But it's cuacc.org for California. Mm-hmm. In Utah, they have Utahns Against Common Core. I learned a lot about my book. I was in Utah just a year ago, and they've been fighting this longer than we are, because Utah was one of the pilot programs to usher this in. And they formed a great network, Utahns Against Common Core. I've had a lot of progress fighting this. Indiana had 2 moms against Common Core that really led the battle. They found that this was already entrenched in their Catholic private school before it was even brought into the public schools. And they did not like this at all, began to speak out. In May, Indiana had both their House and their Senate sign a bill that they will put Common Core on hold for a year, and it was passed by the governor, signed by the governor. So Indiana is now leading the battle fighting Common Core. There are actually about 20 other states that have some form of legislation pending. People are not happy with this. The more they find out how their rights are being taken, and the teachers' rights to even do what they know is best in the classroom, the parental rights. So there are a lot of groups that are organizing to fight it.
Are there any teachers brave enough to fight against this program?
You will find here in California, we have an amazing school board president. Her name is Angela Weinzinger, and she's the president of the Travis United School District, very proudly opposing Common Core, because she recognizes how bad it is. She actually heard me speak last October about it and recognized this. So she started her own Facebook page called Parents and Teachers Against Common Core Standards. And you can just go Parents and Teachers Against Common Core Standards, and her Facebook will come up. Then you'll find other teachers who are brave enough to join her. She has over 5,000 that have joined her Facebook page. Other teachers I would love to join, but they are afraid this data is being collected on them. They're afraid they'll be listed up as not being a good team player, not being willing to use innovative new ideas. So they're afraid to put their name to it, but a lot of them are writing about it, just not putting their name to their writings.
Were you asked by an organization to write this book?
No, I just on my own recognized this as a year ago. This is really scary, and I couldn't find a book written about it. So I started writing. It started a 6-page article, and then it just got bigger and bigger and bigger. Now it's 180 pages. It was published in December of last year, 2012. And it was the fastest book I've ever written. It took me 6 months.
It's very well indexed and documented.
Thank you. appreciate that.
So it's good for people to know that it's got a wonderful index in the back, alphabetical, and it's got many, many websites in it. It's a fabulous educational tool that
Thank you, Jeannie. I appreciate that.
That's for sure.
It took me many midnight hours because I felt a passion to try to get this out before we were so entrenched in this battle.
Well, I think it really shows. That's for sure.
Thank you.
I would really like you to add anything else that people should know about the Common Core program.
Well, one of the things we haven't really gone into deeply is this data that is going to be collected on all of our children and the teachers and the principals. And this was because the FERPA law, that stands for Family Education Rights Protection Act, was changed by Obama and his administration December of 2011, so that the protections are not in there anymore to protect our children. Therefore, they are now doing intrusive data collection, and this will be so much easier with computers. They'll be able to pry into the children's private lives as they're writing their assignments or even taking the tests. And people say, well, this could not be. Well, it's actually the Federal Department of Education that is asking for this data. And it's going to be not just on their test scores, but private information like the parents' income, the parents' political persuasion, their religion, biometrics, fingerprinting, DNA. There's even iris scans in Florida. I think it was last April or May. As the students got off the bus at a school, their irises were photographed. And the parents, finding this out, were outraged, but what could they do? Their protections are gone now. So this, actually, in some literature, we're finding out that there's over 400 points of data collection. And this is just amazing. And this is one of the big reasons why we should be fighting Common Core.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of educators are unaware, probably at the beginning, that this data collecting would occur.
That's right, and that's part of the program they've tried to keep hush-hush and not say very much about. However, the Federal Department of Education just came out with a book in February called Promoting Grit, Tenacity, and Perseverance, Critical Factors for Success in the 21st Century. And as you see, this is the U.S. Department of Education. On page 44, which I have a picture of, it shows this amazing tools for data collection as the children are taking their test. So there is going to be a wristband on their wrist testing their pulse, the mouse that they'll be holding as they're doing the information on the test will test the stress level. Even the chair they're seated in will test their stress level, and there's going to be a camera focused on their face as they're taking the test. This is amazing. Why would they need such a thing? If you were testing the stress level of steel or some metal, these are our precious little children. But this is in the book. They're testing their grit, tenacity, and perseverance. Why do they even have to know such things? And what are they going to do with this data? Who knows? Will this determine what kind of a job they can have someday? We're not being told the truth about this.
That is pretty frightening.
It is.
Oh my. Was there anything else in the book that we should know about that I might not have asked you about?
I do have a comparison in here between the education that my husband had growing up in Nazi Germany. He was born in 1942, and even though it was just shortly thereafter that Hitler was taken out, there is so much information comparing what a totalitarian system is like compared to what a free country is like. And this is on page 26 of my book. I show some of the similarities between Common Core and what my husband experienced, and then this picture that was on a popular German magazine, the Frauenwarte of 1932, and it says, Deutschland Jugend geführt dem Führer, which means German youth belong to the Führer, to the leader. And, you know, for us to think that our children belong to the leader of our country, but when you have a top-down totalitarian system that is taken over, which I truly believe Common Core is going to develop into, such things are possible.
How long has California had the program?
I'm sorry to say it was signed on to in 2012, and it was under Governor Schwarzenegger. So Governor Jerry Brown inherited it, as did a lot of the governors. They didn't even know this program existed till they became the governor. So it was in August of 2010 that it was signed on to, and then it's been steadily being pushed into the schools ever since. Some areas have been selected as a pilot program, and they're farther along with it than others. But the entire state will be pushing it through this September.
So it's still fairly new in California.
Yes, it is.
And is there a specific organization that the teachers can meet and discuss this program to end it?
Well, I would recommend they go to our website, Californians United Against Common Core. We have, in fact, a college professor is very much a part of this, and he is promoting his own website on his own blog in Roseland area where he lives, and our website connects to his. He's put out little cards, little business cards he just gives to everyone to tell them to no longer support Common Core. We have other teachers also across the state that are finding out about this and not liking it. And I suggest also they go to Angela Weinzinger's Facebook page, which is Parents and Educators Against Common Core Standards.
So teachers who are against it and parents can actually belong to the same organizations that would like to have it end.
Definitely.
That's good for everybody to know. And where can this book be bought?
I actually started my own publishing company because this book was done by Ex Libris, and Ex Libris has been taken over by the Pearson Foundation. They're taking over nonfiction and fiction books all over, and I didn't want that to happen anymore, so I started my own little publishing company. It's called the Small Helm Press, and it's right here in Santa Rosa. So you go to www.smallhelmpressassociates.org.
Mm-hmm. Good. Well, I just want to thank you for all your meticulous research on this book. It is extremely thorough. It just seems like you've gone above and beyond in writing it. You do many presentations all over California or all over the United States?
I've spoken mainly all over California, but also in Utah and Idaho. And Idaho is where I grew up, and my alma mater, Idaho Falls High School, group from Idaho Falls brought me back, and I spoke there 3 different times. But it's mainly been in California. I just completed, I think, my 51st speaking engagement this past week, and it's just exciting that more and more groups would like to find out about this. And this is a nonpartisan issue. We have both Republicans and Democrats that are joining together. They realize the freedoms of a teacher to do what she believes is best, the freedoms of a parent to exercise their rights over their children are being taken with this program.
That's good to know that. You said you have an excellent PowerPoint presentation.
Yes, and that can be found on the website. And people can just download that and use it themselves. You can also see me giving a video presentation, and whatever is there, you're free to use.
Well, thank you, Orlean, for presenting this extremely important, timely book to our audience.
Thank you, Jeannie, for having me on.
WriterSpeak is produced at the Community Media Center of the North Bay. We would like to thank our sponsor, the Sonoma County Gazette. Please join us next time for a chat with another talented writer.